Have you ever wondered why certain color combinations just look so good together? Color theory is genuinely fascinating and it can help you enormously in your watercolor practice, even if you're just starting out. Today, we're going to focus on the concept of complementary colors, but rather than simply talking you through a color wheel, I'm going to show you how they behave using this blue and orange frog as an example. It's a perfect example of complementary colors created by nature itself. Orange and blue sitting side by side on a living creature. I've put a reference photo link in the description below if you like to paint along at home. Today I'm painting on cold pressed paper in a sketchbook that I designed in collaboration with Etcher. Our next watercolor sketchbook collaboration is already out and I will leave a link in the description below so you can check it out. And all the colors I'm using are also listed in the description in case anything catches your eye. As always, with these little study demos, I will post a real-time recording along with black and white outlines on my Patreon. Thank you to all my patrons for supporting this channel. So let's get started on the orange sections of the frog. And while I do that, I'll quickly recap what complementary colors actually are for anyone just beginning with color theory. So complementary colors are the ones that sit directly opposite each other on the color wheel. Orange and blue, red and green, yellow and purple. This little poison dart frog from Costa Rica shows it beautifully. Two complementaries, orange and blue, working side by side, and the effect is striking even from a long way off. Picture him sitting on a leaf or a wet rock, you would spot him instantly. And that's entirely the point, that bold coloring is a warning sign, telling predators that his skin is toxic. Which brings us to reason number one for using complementary colors when you paint. When you pair them, each one boosts the other's vibrancy and the combination pulls the eye straight to it. I'm starting here with this reason because I think it's the most useful reason for us as artists and the one that helps most when you're choosing a reference photo or building a more complicated composition. Each color in a complementary pair, so green and red or blue and orange, like in this case, makes its partner look stronger and more vivid. And you get that for free with no extra effort at all, simply by placing them next to each other. It's part of why this frog stands out so sharply against the sea of green or some wet soil. So you can actually watch what happens as I paint. The orange I'm laying into his back will look so much brighter and richer the moment those blue legs go in. Same paint, same amount of water, nothing else changes, but once the blue arrives beside it, the orange will pop. And that's precisely why I love placing complementaries next to each other rather than mixing them. So if you mix a pair in the palette, you'll get a muddy neutral, though that's not always a bad thing, and it's something we'll come back to in just a minute. The next reason always takes people by surprise, and I'll put a little exercise on the screen so you can test it on yourself. See, our eyes make the complement whether we ask them or not. Try this with me. Stare at this really saturated patch of orange for about 20 seconds. Don't look at the frog I'm painting, just at the square. And I'll take the orange away after 20 seconds. And when I do, look at the white part of the screen or at a blank sheet of paper. What you'll see is a soft blue ghost of that same square floating up in front of you. That's your own brain handing you back the complementary color. And if you're wondering whether that's just a trick on the screen, it isn't. You can recreate it exactly with a colored square on a sheet of paper. It works in reverse too. If you stare at a blue square for 20 seconds, you'll be left with an orange square ghost sitting in the same spot. Wolfgang von Goethe, who was a significant figure in early color research, wrote about this, and I love this quote. He said, "The eye has a demand for totality, that it will invent the missing half of a complementary pair all by itself." I just love that idea because it means when we paint this tiny frog in orange and blue, we're not just copying some wild tropical color scheme, we're actually handing our eyes the very thing they were already reaching for. And this matters beyond painting. What you just experienced was your eye producing a color that was never there. Nothing blue reached you, your visual system built it, which tells us something rather lovely about the way we see in general. None of it is a recording. It's more of a collaboration between what's actually in front of us and what our minds do with it. Our eyes go looking for complementaries, so when we place a pair side by side, even on a small sketchbook page, the result feels deeply satisfying. I want you to think about where else this beautiful harmony turns up in nature. Of course, the red and green is the most famous pairing of all, the one we all think of at Christmas, and we've done several tutorials featuring that color combination. The kingfisher bird, which is on my list for an upcoming tutorial, is a beautiful instance of blue and orange working together. Or this peacock I'm painting at the moment, where one tiny splash of warm orange in the eye seems to hold its own against an entire sea of blue. Let me know in comments below which other complementary pairings from nature you'd most like to paint. I'm about to start working on the shadows, and that brings us to the third and final reason, which is the one I suspect a few of you have been waiting for because it seems to be everywhere at the moment. Scroll through social media for 5 minutes and you'll find another video telling you to mix complementary colors for your shadows. I have some strong feelings about this one, especially where watercolor beginners are concerned, but let's start with the facts because the facts are true. Complementary colors really do mix into neutrals, which can give you realistic shadows, and here's why. Paint doesn't work the way light does. When you mix beams of colored light, you're adding wavelengths together, which is why orange light and blue light, for example, would combine into something close to white. But paint does the opposite. Every pigment works by absorbing part of the light that falls on it and bouncing the rest back to your eye. So orange pigments you see here swallow the cool wavelengths and return the warm ones to your eye. Blue pigments swallow the warm wavelengths and return the cool ones. When you stir the two complementary watercolors together in one puddle, between them they're absorbing almost the entire spectrum, and that's very little light left to come back off the paper. What you get is a low chroma, gray or brown. Not because you did anything wrong, but because that's the arithmetic of paint. You're not adding colors together, you're actually taking light away. And that is exactly why I don't usually recommend this approach for beginners and why I use it fairly rarely myself. And you can see the way I'm thinking on this frog. For the shadows on my Winsor orange, I didn't reach across the color wheel for blue. Instead, I used quinacridone burnt orange, which sits right beside my vivid orange, so the shadows stay inside the same family and the color never loses its warmth. And on the blue legs of the frog, my shadows are indothrone blue going on top of the vivid phthalo blue. Same idea, deeper, quieter, but still unmistakably blue. Is there any complementary mixing happening on this page? Yes, a little bit. Wherever the orange and blue actually meet, for example at the elbow, and also in the places where one color segment runs into another, you'll see some neutralizing, but those are really tiny passages. They're more the exception, not the method. So this is my thinking, and I'll say up front that this is only my opinion rather than a rule. Before anything else, when you're studying watercolor, you need to understand values, meaning where's the light, where's the dark, how far apart are they, and does the whole painting hold together tonally? Tonal values are always the foundation and everything else sits on top of them. And it is much easier to learn values when you're working with analogous colors, meaning colors that sit near each other on the wheel, because you can go darker and lighter without your color palette getting muddy. You're solving one problem at a time. If you reach for complementary shadow before you've got tonal values under control, you'll be solving two problems at once in a medium that really doesn't forgive much. From teaching thousands of students, this is what I see over and over. Complementaries mixed together in watercolor produce mud far more often than they produce beautiful neutrals. And it isn't bad luck, it's the mechanism I just described. So each color is actively canceling out the other one's chroma, meaning it takes away the vividness. So it's a very quick route to a page full of muddy gray, and once that's dried up into paper, there's no way we can get the vividness back. which isn't to say I never use complementary shadows. So in our yellow roses tutorial, we dropped purple into yellow shadows and also some blue. And you remember we did the same thing with the coconuts, letting a very diluted purple sit in the shadow side of the yellow fruit. Used sparingly, thinly, and with intention, the effect of complementary shadows is lovely, but that isn't what I'm actually thinking about while I paint usually. So what I'm thinking about is the value structure. Is the shadow dark enough? Is it in the right place? Does it sit correctly against the light? And I lean heavily into analogous colors to build it because that's how I keep my colors clear and bright instead of dulling them out. The other thing worth remembering is that shadows are never one flat color anyway. They're full of reflected light bouncing in from everything nearby. The green leaves underneath, the sky above, the surface the object is sitting on. So the color of your shadow should come from looking, not from a formula. And if you like a proper detailed look at how I approach the shadows, the white shell tutorial is the one to watch. It's all about painting a white object, so shadows are the entire subject, and there's nowhere to hide. I'll leave a link in the description as I'm wrapping up our little frog. So I hope you enjoyed this little breakdown. If you want to dive in deeper into watercolor theory and learn more about watercolor pigments, I highly recommend my pigment review series. You can check them out. I will leave links up on the screen and also in the video description below. If you're just starting to build your palette, I think these are really great resources, and you can download all of these swatch sheets for free. Next week, we will be painting a blue peacock, so don't forget to subscribe. Thank you as always for watching and painting with me.